The laughter stalled when the G Wagon stopped, and 3 small hands reached for mine. We were late by intention, not accident. Dignity prefers an unannounced entrance. Valets straightened, whispers recalibrated, pride adjusted its tie. Inside, someone had promised a show about a poor girl who didn't know her place. I lifted the first child down, then the second, then the third, and the marble learned our names by the sound of our shoes. Doors opened by habit, by heart. We supplied the ladder. Light flashed greedily, scanning for a stumble, a scuff, a crack where mockery could plant a flag. I adjusted a bow, wiped a crumb of dust from a cheek, and let silence escort us farther than any usher could. The host's smile performed for cameras, wide and rehearsed, while my calm performed for no one. He had invited a spectacle. I brought a standard. We walked at the pace of people who belong, because belonging is not a favor to repay, but a posture to keep. A hush collected like velvet along the walls. Image strained to hold its breath. Integrity exhaled. My children looked up at the chandeliers as if the stars had come inside. I looked at the aisle and chose steadiness over ceremony. I did not scan for allies or search for exits. I measured the room with my shoulders, and it fed. Somewhere near the front, someone's laugh tried to rise and then remembered itself. Mockery needed an audience. Dignity needed only a door. We crossed it without asking permission. Whatever they thought poor meant, it was not how I carried my name, or how 3 little hands trusted me to teach them where to stand. That is all you need to know right now. We arrived, we were seen, we did not shrink. If you want the why behind the wheels and the whispers, rewind with me to the rooms where labels were written, and Worth learned another language. I will show you the budgets behind the gowns, the quiet work behind the captions, and the moment I chose myself. Rewind before the doors learned our footsteps, before the G Wagon and the hush. There were years when a label tried to train me. Poor was not a balance, it was a tone. It arrived as jokes about my neighborhood, as compliments that circled back to how low maintenance I was, as invitations that assumed I would be grateful for the corner seat and the check I hadn't agreed to cover. He wore status like a rental tuxedo. I was expected to disappear like a garment bag. He curated an image with the confidence of someone who believed cameras absolve. Suits borrowed and returned. Captions airbrushed into we. Dinners staged against city lights. Speeches about vision that never mentioned who ironed the shirt, who checked the invoices, who walked home because ride shares were for optics. He learned that gloss buys silence. I learned that silence accrues interest if you keep paying. My savings came in envelopes with rubber bands, in careful notes on yellow paper, in grocery lists that made beans taste like a plan. His plans asked for bridge loans I was too embarrassed to call by their real name. He called them belief. I called them Tuesday. When he spoke of levels, I heard ladder, and then watched him pull it up. His family auditioned as an orchestra of class. Aunties who said be gracious when someone sized my shoes. Cousins who asked if I preferred simple because complicated clothes might be too much. A mother who measured worth in last names and venues. Their smiles were warm. Their sentences filed edges where mine used to be. I learned to swallow reactions whole. Pride was plated. Humility bussing tables. Reputation became a tool sharp enough to police doors. He whispered to hosts, and guest lists adjusted like blinds. Let me handle the relationships, he'd say, which was code for making introductions that orphaned me as soon as the photo posted. The more he curated, the more I translated erasure into elegance. I mistook endurance for virtue and called it love. He chose that venue because magazines called it iconic, because chandeliers teach certain people to behave, because marble implies permanence. The room is an archive. He wanted his narrative preserved under glass. The guest list read like a press release. Donors, managers, people who turn nods into contracts. It was designed to prove he had upgraded. The distance from me was progress you could photograph. I knew different stakes. This wasn't about proving I could afford a car or a dress. It was about not letting a story be buried alive. The hours I had stacked, the budgets I had balanced, the dignity I had kept. It was about raising 3 children to understand that worth and wealth are not synonyms. It was about my name. Names survive rooms if you tend them. Faith that didn't ask me to hide. It asked me to stand with a quiet spine. So I began to separate image from integrity. I tracked my contributions without apology. I learned that paperwork is not pettiness. It is protection. I said my name at reception desks and over vendor call. I replaced sorry with here is the scope. He called it pride. I called it oxygen. Still, his pride learned new tricks. He practiced complimenting me in past tense, framed my frugality as proof of his generosity, let friends joke about rescuing me from my zip code. When I asked for my name on proposals, he said optics. When I asked for repayment dates, he said momentum. We are building, his posts announced. My cash flow said I was funding a stagehand role in a show that never listed me. Returning to that room would not be about revenge. It would be about record-keeping of the soul. The venue's prestige mattered because prestige had been used to announce my smallness. The guest list mattered because those witnesses had learned my story in captions curated to make me grateful for erasure. The stakes were not whether I would be mocked again. They were whether I would let mockery assign me a size. So I planned to walk in and let dignity do what image pretends to. I would carry no explanations. I would correct nothing with a speech. I would let my posture spell the sentence I had been writing. Worth outlasts wealth, and truth does not audition. But before a room learns a new language, there's always resistance. The debt, the derision, and the doors that close were not done with me yet. Debt put on cologne and called itself strategy. A bridge loan from my envelope paid for his level-up suit. A short-term float covered a photographer he said we needed for optics. He spoke in decks and buzzwords. I spoke in grocery lists and due dates. When I asked for a timeline, he offered a slogan. When I asked for receipts with my name, he laughed like I had told a cute, "Don't be petty. This is bigger than paper." He learned to rename taking as building. My transfers became belief. My hours became momentum. The car service he booked to impress a gatekeeper was a meeting. The deposit I sent to secure a venue he might someday rent was vision. Each label made the debt sound handsome. Each label trained me to doubt what I knew. Money leaves footprints, and mine were everywhere his story walked. Still, derision learned to whisper so witnesses could shrug. At dinners, he ordered for me without asking, then teased my simple taste, while men compared watches and women compared rings. At his family's table, someone said she cleans up nicely, like decency was a costume. When I brought a thought to a planning call, he summarized it with new pronouns. We decided, we led, we secured. The more he centered his name, the more I disappeared between syllables. Gatekeeping arrived, dressed as love. Let me handle the relationships. He'd say at doors I paid to open. He palmed bouncers, parted velvet ropes, and slipped inside while I held boxes and smiled at clipboards. A rooftop launch divided partners from support. My name was not on the list he handed over. It will be fixed in a minute, he mouthed, then posed for photos I had scheduled. I stood outside with a swag carton and a sky that did not care who belonged. 2 floors beneath the ballroom he would later rent to crown his upgrade. I worked registration for an hour that became the night. The guest list pulsed. He waved from chandeliers. When I approached to deliver a message from catering, a guard lifted a palm and said, "Staff stays there." I did. He texted a heart and later a promise. "Next time I'll get you a wristband." He never did. Inclusion wore paper, belonging wore silence. Meanwhile, his strategy expanded. A temporary gap turned into a credit card in my name he would clear after the contract. A marketing dinner billed as business, posted like a date. The table groaned with courses I would never have ordered. The check arrived in a leather folder and somehow found my lap. When I asked to discuss budget, he sighed. You kill the vibe. Vibes, I learned, are expensive when only one of us pays. Humiliation practiced restraint so I could question myself. He never shouted, he edited. If I pressed for clarity, he said my energy was heavy. If I requested boundaries, he called me cold. If I asked for a seat, he asked me not to make it about time. We are building, he'd insist. Don't count pennies. Counting pennies is how poor girls stay poor, he would joke. And the table would laugh the way people do when relief wins over conviction. My faith wrestled with this script. I mistook endurable for holy, surrender for virtue, shrinking for peace. But peace is not the same as agreement with harm. Quiet does not require erasure. The day I wrote my name on a vendor chat and asked to be CC'd on contracts, he removed me to streamline. Streamline meant keep her useful and invisible. That night, I printed every invoice and placed them in a folder labeled with my name. Foreshadowing gathered like weather. A junior planner who asked for credit on a deck was uninvited from the meeting. A caterer who requested a deposit before shopping was replaced by one willing to trust the brand. When a woman on his team challenged a sexist joke, she was branded difficult and moved to a quieter project. He called it protecting the vibe. I called it draining the room of truth. I chose self-respect over silence, and the door opened wide. It didn't end with shouting. It ended with a measurement. Under the kitchen bulb, bills fanned the table. My folder sat open to numbers that did not clap. He didn't read them. He read me. Be grateful we tolerate a poor girl, he said, tapping the counter like a judge rehearsing pride. Small would have been easier to swallow if it hadn't been sharpened. I had carried groceries and balances. He carried captions. I asked for a receipt with my name. He smiled and said optics. That night, I asked for respect. He offered a label. You're not built for big rooms, he continued, lifting my folder like evidence against me. Stay in support. Let me carry the vision. I heard the verdict inside the sentence. Respect was absent. Strategy wore its clothes. I didn't raise my voice. I raised the price of my presence. Put my name on what my hands built. Return what I loaned. Stop dressing harm as optics, I said. He laughed, soft and dangerous. You'll be back. I moved instead. I packed a single bag, ID, laptop, hard drive, baby wipes out of habit I refused to break. I emailed myself statements, screenshots, invoices. I placed my key on the counter like a period. He didn't look up, only waved his phone like a passport to bigger rooms. Don't be dramatic, he said. We're almost there. Exactly, I answered. I am. Night air met me with honesty. I walked to the bus stop because humility needed practice at public benches as much as pride had practiced balconies. The city hummed like a low mercy. A driver nodded without asking for my plot. I sat beside loneliness, then slid closer to resolve. I prayed the shortest sentence I know. God, meet me in the truth. The bus sighed open. I stepped into my own custody. In a week-to-week room, I learned to sleep without his calendar in my veins. Morning gathered papers the way some gather flowers. I wrote 3 lines in a notebook. Tell the truth. Protect your name. Learn the paper. Loss still reached for me, but I learned to greet it with a boundary. I stopped auditioning for rooms and started preparing contracts. I replaced apologies with scopes, panic with plans. Despair had volume. Resolve had rhythm, and I chose the latter every hour I could count. Freedom didn't feel loud. It felt like my full name spoken from my own mouth. Before I could build, I had to learn. Paper would become light. Boundaries would become doors. Consent would become the floor. No one moved without me. Tomorrow, I would trade shame for clarity, naivete for wisdom, and rumor for records. I closed the notebook, circled my name, and promised to carry it into every room. Leaving wasn't an ending, it was the hinge. I had stepped out of his script and into authorship. Next, I would learn language that keeps doors honest and names intact. We begin with paper and boundaries. I started where I promised, paper first, then breath. At the community legal clinic, a woman with steady eyes drew 2 columns across a notepad, gifts and investments, and asked me to place every transfer, hour, and favor in one of them. Shame tried to bargain. Clarity picked up the pen. If my money created value, it belonged in agreements. If my labor built the thing needed my name. We walked through contracts until the fog lifted. Scope, deliverables, timelines, approvals, payment terms, change orders, cancellation, ownership. Words I had avoided became tools I could carry without cutting myself. She said, "A boundary is a door frame. If someone moves it after you enter, that's not partnership. That's control." I wrote it down and underlined it twice. I opened a fresh ledger that did not scold me. Date, amount, purpose, outcome, who approved, where the receipt lives. I set up a simple system. Deposit before work, milestones tied to deliverables, late fees stated like facts, not threats. I created a project email I alone controlled and routed confirmations there. I asked vendors to reissue invoices that included my role. Most said, of course. The few who balked clarified themselves. Here is the PSA I wish someone had handed me years ago. Document your contributions. Read before you sign. Keep your own records. Protect your rights without apology. Ethics and paper trails are not enemies of love. They are guardians of it. If a relationship cannot survive clarity, it will not survive storms. If someone calls your receipts unspiritual, find a healthier sanctuary. I learned consent in business the way I'd learned it in life. Free, informed, specific, and reversible. No signatures under pressure. No scope swaps midstream without new terms. No quick favors that quietly eat a weekend and erase a byline. I practiced saying, "I'm happy to help. Send the agreement." The first time my voice trembled. The second time, it didn't. Because I am a mother, I added safeguards most contracts ignore. I do not post my children's faces. Partners agree in writing to child protection clauses. No filming, no naming, no timelines that treat family like collateral. Dignity is a deliverable. If a collaboration can't hold that, it can't hold me. Faith, it didn't shrink during this audit. It matured. I stopped asking God to tidy chaos I wouldn't name and started asking for courage to tell the truth kindly. Prayer steadied my hand. Paper guided it. Naivete gave way to wisdom, and wisdom sounded like ordinary sentences. That won't work for me. Please add my name. Send the updated scope. Ciao. The clinic referred me to a small business workshop where an accountant taught me cash flow like a hymn. Profit isn't a feeling, she smiled. It's a formula. I built a rate sheet that didn't apologize and an intake form that asked better questions. With the basics clean, the fear quieted. I could build now without bleeding. And when work came, it found a different woman. One whose name had learned to walk beside her. The next chapter begins there. Rooms that breathe, people who honor, and a mentor who treated partnership like respect instead of control. Under that steadiness, my work gathered weight, my calendar found color, and the door I once guarded finally opened toward me for good. Work arrived first as whispers, then as a calendar. The community center needed someone to turn a health fair into clarity. The library wanted a scholarship night that felt like honor instead of hurry. The clinic asked for a donor breakfast where gratitude wouldn't embarrass anyone. I carried a bin of tape, pens, batteries, and patience. I labeled cables, drew maps, and built small bridges between good intentions and good timing. When the doors opened, rooms breathed. After each event, I sent a tidy recap. What worked, what needed mending, what we would improve by Friday. Deposits came first. Scopes lived in writing. Change orders wore their own names. I priced like an adult. I paid my assistants on time. I introduced myself to custodians and security before shaking a single patron's hand, because respect has to start at the edges if you want it to reach the middle. Templates became scaffolding. Run of show, vendor grid, contact tree, rain plan, evacuation path, a script for apologies that fixed things instead of shining them. I learned the language of sound checks and fire exits, the difference between a beautiful room and a safe one, the kindness of an extra sign that says restroom this way so nobody has to ask. People began passing my number with a sentence: "She makes rooms breathe." He found me by following that air. A foundation director with a quiet coat and attentive shoes arrived 30 minutes early to a neighborhood fundraiser and asked 2 questions that proved he understood work. What do you need to do your best here? And what won't you trade to get it done? I answered plainly. Clear agreements, timely decisions, and fees paid when promised. I won't trade dignity for spectacle or community for clout. He nodded like a man who trusts ordinary sentences. He hired me for a modest series about food access and after-school programs. The contract carried my name. The deposit landed without a reminder. And when a sponsor tried to loop around me, he forwarded the message and wrote, "Please coordinate with her. She leads." Transaction turned into respect in a single line. Exploitation needs shadows. Partnership likes the lights on. Under that canopy, I grew without apology. I shadowed the audio tech and learned why microphones fail, asked chefs about hold times so buffets served dignity, walked the dock at dawn to understand the choreography of deliveries. I trained 2 assistants who had been told to keep their competence quiet. We built checklists that held under pressure, a radio etiquette that kept voices calm, and a habit of thanking every unseen hand by name. I learned to say no as a complete sentence, no to exposure work that paid in pressure, no to weekend quick favors that ate a Monday, no to meetings without agendas. My no made room for my yes. A community hospital asked me to redesign how they welcomed grieving families. We said yes. We listened more than we spoke and left the hallway softer than we found it. The director modeled partnership instead of control. He asked for my perspective in front of people who might pretend not to care, credited me without flinching, and never stood between me and a problem I was solving. When mistakes happen, he looked for causes, not culprits. He sent short notes that landed like clean water. Calm is contagious. I kept giving it. I am a mother. So my contracts learned to guard children. No filming, no naming, no public schedules that turn homes into maps. He signed without edit. When one of my kids ran a fever on event day, he texted, "Family first, we will adjust." He meant it. He moved a rehearsal, not the goalposts, and asked what support would keep the team steady. Transportation quietly became a safety issue. Gear had multiplied. Late nights and early docks made rideshares feel like risk. 3 car seats do not negotiate. The director introduced me to a fleet manager who spoke in payload and braking distance, not vanity. We ran numbers, looked at maintenance histories, and bought a used G Wagon with more miles than shine and more safety than swagger. All-wheel drive for bad weather, cargo for cases, height for visibility, anchors for car seat. People would call it a flex. We called it a tool. It carried gear on Thursdays and sleeping children on Sunday. Dignity rides best when it buckles in. Love arrived like the rest of my rebuild, through actions, not announcements. He showed up early, carried cases without claiming credit, learned my team's names, left the stage before the applause. He never interrupted a sentence I had not finished. He asked before he helped. He listened when I said, "Not now," and believed me when I said I'm fine. When he finally reached for my hand, it felt like a contract I had already read. We dated at the pace of people who have learned to count costs. We ate simple dinners, argued kindly about logistics, and practiced being public without being performative. He met my children with gentleness I didn't have to translate. We kept them off camera and out of caption. We kept our boundaries sturdy and our circles small. Faith sat with us at quiet tables and taught us to bless meals without asking for spectacle. Then the gold-foiled invitation arrived, daring my poise again. The envelope glittered like a dare wrapped in manners. Heavy stock, gold foil, a caption from a mutual that read, "Come see what you lost." He wanted a cameo from the girl he once called poor, a reference point for his upgrade narrative. Provocation knocked with perfume. Poise answered with clean hands. I set it on my desk until my pulse came back to normal. Then I wrote down terms. I would attend briefly, quietly, on my schedule, with my children at my side because their existence is not a rumor. We would not perform. We would arrive as a family, leave as a family, and let our posture say what captions cannot. I emailed guest services. My name appears on the list. I plan a short, unobtrusive visit. If confusion arises, please call me aside rather than escalate on the floor. I copied the operations manager I knew and added our boundary. No photography of my children, no recording, and no seating near the stage. Thank you for protecting guest dignity, including the smallest ones. Logistics followed like choreography. Car seats checked and buckled, snacks packed, a simple dress, low heels, and matching outfits for the triplets that looked like childhood, not costume. A handwritten card for the couple that cost nothing but pride and contained only peace. Arrival plan. 10 minutes before the toast. Seating. Last row. Aisle. Clear path. Exit. The moment the air curdles. Rideshare backup if parking snarls. A friend on text is a safety net, not a sword. My partner had offered to come. I told him, not this time. This one was my spine's errand. I prayed one sentence, keep me in the truth. Then I slept. In the morning I worked, mothered, and memorized nothing but my own name. Grace would go first, policy would walk beside. If pride tried to turn a room into a weapon, I would let boundaries answer. Presence over pettiness, dignity over noise. We would bring our calm, and we would leave it intact. If Grace held, we'd exit early. If not, we'd exit sooner, either way whole. We arrived when the plan said we should. 10 minutes before the toast, 3 small hands tucked into mine. Calm sipped into our coats. The valet opened the door like a question. I answered with a nod and a thank you. Inside, the lobby glittered with practiced welcome. I adjusted a bow, balanced a snack rumor at the corner of a mouth, and followed the map I'd drawn. Guest services found my name without stalling. A gentle note. Last row, aisle, clear path. No photographs of minors. Policies walked beside Grace. The doors breathed once, then surrendered us to chandeliers. He saw me in the glass before he saw me in the room. Pride tilting his chin toward a camera that never asked questions. His new circle performed delight on cue. I declined the invitation to react. My children studied the ceiling like students of light. I studied the aisle. A guest in sequins whispered, "Rental." And someone else replied, "Of course." A man near the bar smirked, "Upgrades look borrowed." I gave those sentences nowhere to live. We sat, backs aligned with the chairs, hands resting like punctuation. Dignity took attendance. Mockery rolled its eyes and insisted on credit. The MC lifted the mic with a steadiness I recognized. "Welcome," she said, and a reminder, this is a celebration. We honor guests and staff. We do not perform derision. A few laughs tried to bloom and withered. Dad. She continued, per family request. No photographs of minors, no recording in the aisles. If you have questions, see operations. Kindness wore a lanyard. I thanked God for ordinary sentences that carry safekeeping. The band found a courteous song, and servers moved like first aid, pouring water instead of rumors. Noise looked restless. Truth sat down and crossed its legs to breathe. He tapped his glass anyway, a small rebellion against policy. "To vision," he grinned, eyes skating past me as if I were a smudge. Some of us, he said, outgrow thrift. A chuckle rippled. His wife held the mic next and smiled like a headline. May the days of counting pennies be behind certain people, she quipped. Someone applauded without conviction. Ego loves easy targets. I declined to audition. I lifted water, not bait, and taught my children to do the same. Their little fingers copied my calm, and calm learned it could multiply without raising its voice that night. On the head table, a program lay open to the sponsor page, a grid of logos arranged like a choir. Near the bottom, my company's name appeared as logistics partner for a community series the foundation hosted last quarter. It wasn't a secret, it just wasn't loud. A donor Navy paused by my row and whispered, Are you the one who ran the food access nights? I nodded. They were humane, she said. Image sneered. Integrity produced a receipt that didn't injure anyone. I returned my gaze to the stage and refused the pleasure of watching face change tonight. A server drifted close and knelt slightly so no one would feel large. Water, ma'am? I thanked her and asked her name. She told me, then asked quietly if the children needed anything. We're okay, I said. Thank you for seeing them. Dignity nodded from the margins. At the head table, he reached for another quip and found only the echo of the last. He gestured toward our row like a tour guide. Some people arrive in borrowed cars, he began. The MC moved, quick and calm. We don't comment on guests, she said. We welcome them. The room exhaled. He tried again with a toast about starting at the bottom that confused humility with humiliation. The operations manager, who had received my email, lifted a small pause card beside the stage. Staff reset water, not reputation. The band found a bridge between songs and crossed it slowly. I felt my children lean into my sleeves and knew what to do. Stay. Presence is a sentence no heckler can edit. The MC redirected into gratitude for vendors and volunteers. Several names were read. Mine appeared as quietly as it had been placed. Truth wore lowercase. Noise forgot its lines entirely. A woman in a navy suit I recognized from another life approached during the lull. Your series changed our donor meetings, she said, eyes kind, voice careful. We stopped staging pain. She handed me a simple card, no flourish, only the hospital's crest and her title, and asked if we might speak next week. I nodded, filed the moment under grace, and slipped the card into my bag. He watched from the dais, waiting for me to perform gratitude. I offered only a small smile. Receipts arrived as invitations to do more good, not as weapons to score points for anyone watching. Someone at the head table tried one last line about old neighborhoods and new standards. The MC stepped closer, kindness anchored in contract. We're here to celebrate, she said, not to compare. The sentence landed like a hand on a shoulder that needed it. He glanced at his wife, who adjusted her napkin and did not engage. Pride looked around for a stagehand. Accountability dimmed the spotlight. I stayed seated and unbothered, teaching calm by example. My children traced patterns on the program with a finger. Awe does not need permission. Neither does belonging when it knows its name well. When dinner released the room, I stood to leave, gift card in hand. The operations manager met me by the aisle with that useful calm venues rarely teach. Thank you for your note, she said. If anything turns, we pause first. I thanked her and promised to send feedback that praised the MC by name. He intercepted us with a smile that couldn't decide its purpose. You did well, he said as if grading a test. You wore the car nicely. I answered. We came for 10 minutes in peace, both of which we received. Please enjoy your evening, sir. He tried to pivot into nostalgia, but nostalgia requires truth to play along. Remember when, he began. I spared him the labor of rewiring a past that didn't fit. Take care, I said, and turned toward the door with my children gathered, not displayed. A bridesmaid brushed my sleeve and whispered, I'm learning. I told her learning is a quiet crown. In the lobby, a donor I'd never met lifted a hand. "Your work made last quarter possible," she said. "We'll call next week." I offered a nod and carried nothing louder than gratitude. Fame is not the goal today. Outside, the night felt generous, unbothered by captions. I buckled 3 small bodies into safety and exhaled the room from my shoulders. The city kept its opinions. I kept my peace. We drove away without rush, work cases anchored behind the seats the way values anchor choices. No victory lap, no speech, just the steady clarity that what tried to shame me had met a boundary and found it immovable. Wealth had performed, worth had worked, image had demanded attention, integrity had done the invisible labor again. Tomorrow there would be emails and policies, maybe invitations. Tonight, only rest home. Morning arrived without confetti. It brought email. The operations lead thanked me for the heads-up note and attached an incident log. Times, decisions, how the pause card cooled the room, how the MC redirected without shaming anyone. "We'll debrief with staff and the host," she wrote, "so our policies keep their promise." It wasn't spectacle, it was stewardship. By noon, a private apology found my inbox. He acknowledged class-based jabs, admitted I had been invited as a prop in his narrative, and noted that the venue standards carried the night, not his. He did not ask for a meeting. I replied with 4 sentences. "Thank you for the apology. I accept it. Please keep communication in writing. I wish you peace. Forgiveness is not access. It is clarity." A public correction followed on his feed. 2 paragraphs. The mockery was wrong. The narrative was careless. The venue's dignity rules were right. He kept my children outside of it. He thanked staff by role, not by name, and pledged a donation to the scholarship fund the foundation uses for hourly workers pursuing certification. The comments argued, I didn't. Consequences moved quietly where they count. A sponsor paused a pending activation, citing values alignment. A media house declined to release clips of the toast, explaining they do not distribute content that humiliates guests. A planner he admires sent a brief titled, "Before You Toast, What Belongs at a Mic?" None of it was revenge. It was a network remembering its standard. The venue updated contracts. A guest dignity clause now prohibits derision, outlines removal only for crime, and requires a designated relation contact to decide with management present. Staff received relation refreshers and pocket pause cards. Back of house signage added, "No photography of minors, not props." The MC team finalized a script for redirecting without adding shame. Big protection. The foundation lets what worked. He offered a partnership design by design workshops for venue, a modest grant to expand, and a platform checklist. Anyone's honored boundary. No mining my past. Credits paid on schedule. I said yes, not we hired. We wrote a slim guide with scripts for apologies, language for seating without status games, and cues for pausing before harm. We trained security to read rooms, not rumors, volunteers to greet without bias, hosts to correct in the moment and repair online later. We measured success in small mercies, fewer incidents, faster pauses, better air. He emailed once more, acknowledging the series and wishing us well. I thanked him and kept the boundary. Email only. Restoration is not reunion. It is a standard set down so others don't have to bleed to learn it. What didn't happen matters too. I did not post a thread. I did not pass the microphone to vengeance. My piece did not need an audience. Closure arrived as a calendar filled with honest work and a team whose names sit on what they build. The same doors that once archived my erasure now host workshops that protect other names. We used the G Wagon the way we intended. Car seats buckled, cases strapped, late nights turned safe. Work traveled, dignity traveled with it. On Sundays, gratitude rode shotgun. Image had demanded a victory lap. Integrity wrote a policy, paid women on time, and went back to work. That's the justice I can live with. The moral weight. Character is the currency that doesn't crash when the room goes quiet. Wealth can rend chandeliers. Worth learns how to stand when the lights are off. If pride means dignity needs only a door. That night, a label tried to play king. Posture wore the crown. Remember this. Don't weaponize status to make people small, and don't hand your name to anyone who spends it carelessly. Protect your rights without apology. Put your name on the work your hands build. Document contributions, read before you sign, and keep your own records. Ethics and paper trails aren't enemies of love. They are guardians of it. Say no without an essay. Say yes where values and paperwork agree. When noise demands spectacle, answer with truth and a spine. When pride performs, let humility hold the line. Duh. My faith note is gentle. Providence is not a shortcut. It is a steady path. I believe God meets us where courage and clarity hold hands, not where fear and pretense shake them. Prayer steadies the hand that signs wisely. Peace does not ask you to disappear. It invites you to stand present, tender and whole. If you are rebuilding, start small and true. Choose partners who respect names, not just results. Make boundaries boring and dependable. Replace apology with clarity. Replace panic with plans. Teach your rooms to breathe. Greet the unseen. Honor the edges. And keep minors off stage. Restoration beats revenge every time, because restoration keeps working after the clapping fade. Now, I'd love to hear from you. Where are you watching from? What would you have done in that room? Walk away, forgive, or bring receipts? Tell me in the comments and lift someone while you're there. Share one sentence you wish your younger self had heard. If this story strengthened your spine, tap like and subscribe for more quiet grace and smart receipts. Stories where dignity wins and lessons travel. Save it. Share it with someone who needs a calm voice, and ring the bell so you never miss a premiere. We are building a community that chooses hope over cynicism, truth over noise, and humility over pride. Thank you for staying. Your presence matters. Keep paperwork tidy, boundaries kind, and your heart brave. I'll meet you in the next. Until then, choose calm over clamor, standards over spectacle, and community over isolation. Your voice belongs here. Your dignity goes everywhere with you.